I would like to take a moment before we get into today's main episode and to talk about my sponsor for the podcast. Podmatch is a new podcasting site dedicated to all podcasters. The platform helps hosts get connected with potential guests to appear on their show, as well as allow guests to find podcasts that will give them a chance to share their story. Podmatch offers many tools to help organize your page, from to-do lists to episode planning to potentially appearing on a leaderboard. Podmatch has it all. The best part, you have the potential to get paid. And who doesn't like to get paid from home? I like to. With an easy sign up, you can start connecting with podcasters and guests immediately. I have been a part of Podmatch since the beginning of May, and I have got to say that it was the best decision I've ever made because Podmatch helps your podcast grow. It helps you get connected with people that have very interesting, very compelling background stories that are just waiting for their story to be shared. So if you are a host or guest and would like to start building professional relationships, explore more opportunities, and have your story shared, I highly suggest that you sign up with Podmatch today by going to joinpodmatch.com/lethal venom to start expanding your network in seconds. I would like to give another huge thank you to Podmatch for sponsoring this episode. Now on to our main episode, and again, you can sign up at joinpodmatch.com/lethal venom to begin your podcasting journey today. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Lethal Venom Podcast, the show where I talk about anything I want with the honest to God truth and the lies told. Today, I'm joined by Mr. Andrew-Ryan Profaci. Andrew is a cult and cancer survivor, as well as the author of The War on Love, a raw, groundbreaking memoir exposing the hidden truth behind the Love Has Won cult and its infamous leader, Amy Carlson, aka Mother God. As the person closest to Amy, Andrew shares shocking secrets no news outlet, documentary, or survivor has ever revealed, including how he was manipulated and what it took to finally break free. Andrew has met a very unique set of challenges in his life. As if constantly being tested to rise above higher than before, he has answered every time with love, tenacity, and determination. In his 40 years, he's learned and lived a lifetime of lessons and seeks to serve others by connecting with them and spreading a message of hope. So I'd like to give a huge, huge welcome to Andrew. Thank you so much for coming on. I cannot wait to have your story shared today. I think it's a story that needs to be shared.
I appreciate that. Thank you for having me. I'm grateful to be here, excited to jump in with you, and I hope your listeners enjoy an interesting and fun show. So yeah, I'm excited to jump in.
So, Phil, please introduce yourself and please feel free to share a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, so my name is Andrew-Ryan Profaci. I'm doing, the podcast because I wrote the book, The War on Love, which is mostly about my time with what became a world famous cult known as Love Has Won through HBO documentaries, Vice documentary. I did Dateline NBC. They had gained notoriety. I had been with them, I guess you could say in the early days. And it started one way and ended something completely different, which we can get into. I wrote the book years later after, the cult gained a lot of notoriety because nobody really knew what the true story behind it was. And I wanted to put the truth out there so that, I would one, humanize the people who were involved instead of, them just being the caricatures that they were. And I wanted to share, like you said, a message of hope, resilience, determination, a message ultimately of faith and hope. And that's something that's available to everyone. And if I can, take my lessons and put them forward and hopefully inspire or help other people, then I think that's one of the most incredible things that we can do in our lives. So that's what I'm committed to doing at the moment. When I have to work and make money, I do digital marketing, something I did for the cult as well. Otherwise, I'm 41 as of 2 days ago. And yeah, I'm just pushing forward with my story with the ultimate intent of helping people any way I can.
So, how did you get caught up in the Love Has Won cult, and how did you become a member of that?
Yeah, interesting story. The way it started for me is, similar to other people, but I had some inexplicable experiences in meditation and things I saw within, I guess, within about a 10 to 14 day time span. And I believed that these experiences were pointing me towards this group of people who were living together, running a website, had a popular chat room. They lived together and were spreading a message of love, unity, hope, and global transformation. And it's something that through my seeking for truth, which is something that I was very interested in, conspiracies, and then it became spirituality. And I came across their website, came into their chat room, started to get familiar, had these inexplicable experiences while I'm starting to feel bonded with them. And I took it as a sign, and even to this day, I still believe I took it that I was being led in that direction. Ultimately, I joined. Obviously, that's just a really general way of putting it. There was a lot of specific things that happened, but I joined with the intent of that unifying message. And when I got there, I mean, literally walked in the door, took a look around and said, "Oh my God, I think I made a huge, huge mistake." I ended up staying for nearly 10 months, which turned into almost a year after she followed me. But that time was extremely interesting, a lot of back and forth, but it started with my spiritual truth-seeking journey and the intent of joining people who were putting forth this positive message. And unfortunately, it turned into something much darker and a little bit more insidious than that. Yeah.
When you were in the cult, what were some of the practices that they did, or what did they try to ingrain into your brain of like, this is how what life is like compared to what was actually fake?
Yeah, there's a good question. And, it's interesting when you get in a bubble of people in a cult, usually they try to isolate you is the very first thing, that will happen. You will find yourself isolated from the outside world, outside voices, your family, it's suggested to you to cut people off. And you find yourself in this bubble where, you start to drift away from reality and you can't tell how far you've gone because you don't have any more reference points. When you're living in a home with people who all carry the same belief system, you can drift off far into, left field and really not realize how far you've gone again because you don't have that outer world pulling and tugging on your belief systems. And, isolating you from your family, your friends, the outside world, that was one of the things that was done. They were very vocal about it. Another was, the cult was run by a woman, which is not very common. Her name is Amy Carlson, but she believed she was Mother God, the Mother God, the mother of creation, the earth incarnated into a human vessel, capital God. She believed she was it. And I was in a really impressionable place, and I still have hard time, even now, 10 years later, looking back, trying to understand, you know, the belief about her being Mother God and going along with it. But again, I go back to these incredible, unexplainable experiences I had in meditation where I saw visions, I got messages, I literally heard a voice. On the beach, I saw a UFO. I watched it, gosh, for 5, 10 minutes. And all these things, reaffirmed to me that I was meant to be there, regardless of how crazy the belief system felt. And without those, I probably would have run away because it was clear right away that Amy, her mother God, was in control. Her word was law. She didn't like to answer questions when it came to her credibility. Instead of answering those questions without being defensive, being open, she would instead, single you out and, laugh at you, make you feel stupid, belittle you for going there. And, all these things were huge red flags. And, those were some of the things that we did. We also, a lot of meditation. We ran the websites. She did a lot of YouTube videos trying to spread the message. But over time, the message got lost. and it became more about her. And that's where, the seed was planted. And, as far as forks in the road go, that's where things took a nasty turn and would inevitably spiral into, the day the home was raided and they found her corpse. They found her dead in a bed, mummified, being worshipped like a shrine wrapped in Christmas lights. The whole team was arrested. I had been gone for years at this point, but it all started with that decision for it to be about her rather than the message. Fast forward several years, and they were out of control.
Describe to me how you were able to escape the cult, because you're the first person I've ever interviewed that's been in kind of, I guess, victimized to a cult. What Describe the process of how you were able to break free from it, because I've never really heard like the process of it. Was it difficult, or did you have after you left, did you have any people from the cult try to reach out to you?
Sure, sure. So, as far as the process of leaving, um, people were obviously encouraged to stay and to believe, but when somebody's claiming their mother God, you tend to have a revolving door of members, right? Because obviously it's not the case. Not in the, I mean, she was an alcoholic. It was clear that she had, you know, not tended to some of her emotional issues. She was prone to outbreaks. She wasn't always nice. It was clear that she wasn't some ascended being, godly type. She would get very defensive. And, it was obvious that Mother God, that persona wasn't realistic. So people would leave all the time and they weren't necessarily stopped. But in my case, I was there because I wanted growth. Even though the message had gotten off track, I felt that there was a lot of value there, and I was learning a lot because it was almost like I had, stepped into this fire of delusion, belief systems, and it was like, being thrown into the water. I used to say, sink or swim, and I had to learn to swim in the deep end of the ocean. And that's essentially what I did over the course of several months, being gaslit, being lied to, being deceived, being told one thing when the truth was another, dealing with the confusion, trying to work it out, thinking it was me that was wrong for months, and then realizing, having the epiphany, the truth comes out. And finally, I realize, my intuition is right the whole time. Yes, this is all delusional. There are some good parts. This is where it got lost. This is where it's true. All of that process was really valuable for me as far as my personal growth goes. And that's why I stayed. As far as getting out, I had made a decision to leave at, I guess, the 9 month point because I was being supplanted by somebody else. I had actually grown into a relationship with Amy. When I got there, she told me I was supposed to be father God to her mother God. And I tried for weeks to follow her um, and surrender to her, but it didn't work. It didn't take me long to realize that no, this is the wrong path. That's not going to work. I didn't understand it. I didn't believe she was God or that I was going to become, the vessel for this consciousness, but I was trying because I felt led there. And once I felt that my lessons were learned, I felt confident in leaving. And like I said, we had been in a relationship together and it had been 9 months. I served her faithfully. The relationship was great as far as the human aspect. But when it came to the mother God persona, by the time I left, I was rebelling hard from the inside. And it became difficult. Obviously, I couldn't be the father God anymore because I didn't believe. So she was looking to replace me. She wanted to keep our relationship, but have somebody else step into the role. But she was always attracted to a new man. She had a promiscuous nature to her. And it was like having to watch your own girlfriend, fall into someone else's lap right in front of you. And after everything, that was the one experience that I was just like, nope, this is too much. That's not the experience I want. I've learned my lessons. I'll take them. Thank you. I'm leaving in good spirits. I'm not angry with anybody. Hug everybody goodbye, but it's my time to go. And I left. She ended up following me across the country, promising to leave it all behind, but it was lip service. And that's how I inevitably left the cult.
Wow.
Yeah, I know there's a lot in there. I apologize. It's just there's so much.
Well, I think this needs to be heard because I know a lot of people get sucked into these cults, and it's stories like yours that need to be heard that said that you can get out of it, and this is like the
Sure.
positive side of it. You did mention that she did pass away in 2021, uh,
Right.
due to her being found mummified in her compound. However, um, before we started recording, we were talking, and you had said that she had appeared on Dr. Phil, and she appeared back in 2020. And what was her main objective of going on Dr. Phil? Describe a little bit about what she went on Dr. Phil for and what was her ultimate goal.
Yeah, so she fully 100% believed that Dr. Phil was going to be her coming out party to the world as Mother God. She truly believed that Dr. Phil was going to have her on the show and say, World, Mother God is here. And I wasn't with the group at the time. I don't remember how I knew about it beforehand. And I thought to myself, if they can't even see what's coming, and she was totally blindsided. If you look at that interview, you can tell she was shell-shocked. She didn't think he was going to, really go at her for claiming this persona. She expected something else. It's very clear in the video. And it just showed how far off from reality and balance that the team and the belief system had come if she believed that Dr. Phil was throwing Mother God a coming out party to the world.
It's always like, to go on
It's a
Dr.
lot to
Phil
wrap
and
your head around.
say
Yeah.
that, I was almost about to laugh because of how, like, this is how outlandish it was to go in there and be like, "Oh, Mother God," but I know she's gonna come back and haunt me. I don't care. She gonna come haunt my ass. My ass. I don't care. Um. So after the after you got out, you had mentioned that you were featured on Dateline NBC. You've also been on HBO and Vice. How
Yeah.
did um how did Dateline kind of reach out to you to have your story shared? Did they know prior to your story, or did they see something online that pertained to the cult that they would like wanted to have you on as an interview?
Sure. So I believe Dateline found me through the family of an ex-member who had left the team relatively close to the time Dateline did. See, I was with the team in 2014 and 2015. Amy passed away in 2021. So there was a good amount of time in there, but I made my time worth it and very memorable as far as rebelling against the belief system. So when these people, Dateline had asked, who should we speak to and who should we reach out to? They said, you need to talk to Andrew because he was closer to Amy than anybody. He tried to stop it. I started as a believer and then slowly worked my way through it all and ended up as somebody trying to dismantle it and help her snap her out of this. And I tried, man, I tried like hell, excuse me. And it didn't work. Unfortunately, it didn't work. But they knew I had a lot to say about it and could offer some really deep insights into the cult and Amy herself personally. So that's how they got a hold of me. Somehow they got my phone number and gave me a call. And then the same thing with Vice and HBO.
I have noticed here that on a Wikipedia account now, we all know that's so accurate, but I use it for everything because I don't care. When she went on Dr. Phil, that she had actually also confronted her family. Was her did her family agree with her beliefs? And if they didn't, did they reach out to you and have said anything about her behavior to you, or after you had left the cult, did her family reach out to you in any way?
I I do speak to her family, yes, her sisters and her mother. Not much her son, or she has a daughter as well. I've never spoken to her daughter. But no, they don't follow the belief system. To them, she was just Amy. They could see, she had somewhat of a sordid and troubled past. Um, some issues with childhood, and some things that maybe weren't handled. She actually was at dinner one night. I think it was 2010 or 11. Um, she was at dinner with her family, sitting at the table at their home, and got up and said, "I'm leaving." And when she left, they were kind of a little befuddled, but didn't realize that when she just got up and left, she actually never came back. They were caught completely off guard, and no, they didn't believe that she was Mother God, God, the mother of creation. No, they didn't believe. They saw Amy, and they saw the human being that I saw, and they were there, as you said, on Dr. Phil, hoping to get through to her. But as I said, her expectations were far off in left field from where the general consensus of what reality was at. So, unfortunately, I know this has been a really difficult experience for them. Um, we've connected, and I believe, based on how I speak about Amy and the fact that I cared about her, I tried to help. I think that that's meaningful to them because I don't think there's anybody else who ever joined the group who either got so close to her or fought so hard to help her and to snap her out of it. And I think they appreciate that, and they're good, regular people.
Is the cult still, I guess, a thing, or did it get terminated after the she died or was found dead?
Yeah, so a little bit of rebranding going on, a little bit of, scattering from people, going different directions. And I know a couple of the members have attempted to, keep the candle burning, so to speak, and, keep on moving forward with the message, even though their belief system has been, disassembled and, contradicted, a thousand ways to Sunday. They continue on with Mother God's message. She was an excessive note taker. They even printed her notebooks, into a book, and are continuing forward with her message despite everything that has happened. And it's unfortunate to see that they're not taking what is being offered to them as far as information, giving them the opportunity to disseminate and learn and grow, and they're staying stuck in the same place. And it's unfortunate that they would carry this forward. They actually expected, when Amy passed, that alien spacecraft would come down and literally pick her up, take her body, and bring her up to the ships. And, this is what they were saying they were expecting, and it never happened. Like everything else she had ever, you know, foreordained was coming. Nothing ever came true. And despite all of that, they still continue forward and reject the lessons of actuality. And I pray for them all the time. I'm open to them, but as far as they're concerned, I am, the worst person walking the face of the earth because of the fact that I tried to disassemble everything. And even to this day, I'm unapologetic about it, and I speak out. I speak with love, but I'm very firm as far as my beliefs.
It takes a lot of courage to, not just be in a cult, but to be able to escape and tell the truth. Because some people could actually get out of it and they never speak of it again. They don't share it. They don't do any of this. So for you to be able to go on these very highly watched shows, to be and write a book about it and be open on podcasts about it, that takes a lot of guts. So I have to give you a lot of credit for you to be able to share it because I know this is a tough thing to talk about because I know that it's been traumatizing and I know that it's been even though you were in it for like 10 months, there's some people that stay in it for decades and years and they never get out of it. So I do I really appreciate you coming on and being able to share this because it's something that I know a lot of people that have been able to escape can look back at it and be proud that they were able to. And this episode could help them, if people are stuck in it, be able to break free. Because so
Yeah,
I give you a lot of props and a lot of flowers for that because it's something that a lot of people are scared to do. But I see you're a huge inspiration for them. That's
thank you.
fantastic what you're doing. You
I
know,
do appreciate it, and it was real quick. It was a hard decision at first, but after you spend a few months doing videos, trying to be Father God and the experience I had, the whole worrying about your image that went out the window. And there's a lot more value that I can give by speaking out and getting past what's uncomfortable. And that's the intention. I feel blessed to be in the position. Doesn't feel like a sacrifice. It feels like an opportunity. And that's my intention.
on top of that, looking over your thing, that's not the only thing that you've actually been through at all. That was kind of like just like the
No, not
scratch of it.
quite.
Um,
Not quite. There's been a good bit, yeah, before and after.
so before you had went into the cult, you actually was involved in a really bad fatal car accident at 18. Can you describe a little bit about um that day?
Sure, sure. I remember the Giants were playing. Football, New York Giants. I don't remember who they were playing. Maybe the Vikings. We were at my friend's house, and it was either, I think, a Friday night or a Saturday night. I don't remember. It was October 28th, 2002. And we had decided to go out and pick up a couple of girls that I knew. They were leaving a party, wanted to hang out. So we went and picked him up, and he had a really fast car. It was a twin turbo Mitsubishi Eclipse GSX, hooked up, money under the hood. Loved to go fast. So did I. Um, kind of living, flying by the seat of our pants. And after we picked up those girls, the house that they were leaving is on a long road that's a long straightaway. That at the end of that straightaway goes into a really tight S turn. I'm not so sure that he knew that road as well as I did. I don't remember this part, but I know what happened, and I assume he was showing them how fast his car was, super high rate of speed. S turn surprised him. He overcompensates, ends up hitting the grass. We hit a tree sideways. All the energy goes through the door, through my hip, explodes my pelvis. He snaps his neck. He is gone instantly. We hit a tree at, gosh, somewhere between 50 and 70 miles an hour. Two girls in the back seat, thank God, were relatively okay. One broken ankle, the other had stitches over her eye from where the other's tooth had hit her. And other than that, we were all very blessed to live through that. The car was mangled. It took them about 90 minutes to cut us out. The first thing I remember was the feeling of having a heavy blanket put over me before they started cutting the car apart because the glass starts to pop on top of you. I remember that. I don't remember the helicopter ride. They assumed I must have, intense internal bleeding. So they sent me in a helicopter to the trauma room, x-rays and scans. And I had, busted pelvis, broken in 7, 9 places, uh, a collapsed lung. But other than that, I literally didn't have a scratch on me. And I was very blessed to make it through that. And that experience was the beginning of the end of my uh, rude and kind of, difficult teenage years, to put it mildly, and the beginning of what would become my desire to seek truth and awakening and spirituality because I felt like I had been saved by God and I had questions about the nature of reality and why I was saved, why me, what is my purpose here? I must be meant for something if you saved me. So what is it? And that's what began. It took some time, didn't happen right away, but that's what really began it all.
Oh, and I'm so sorry about your friend in the car
Thank
accident.
you.
That's awful. Um, I'm glad that you're okay, and I'm glad that the girls were okay. But that's so unfortunate. I know that's so hard at 18. I
Too many children are lost that way. It's really a shame.
It really is. It's everyone I know speeds. Everyone, everyone I know, and I drive the speed limit. And they're like, "Why do you drive the speed limit?" And I'm like, "Cause I don't want to
You
get a
go so
ticket.
slow. Yeah,
I
I'm
don't
the
want
same
to."
way.
I'm the only one in my friend group, this is all my friends from everywhere drive so fast, and I'm like, and then when they get in the car with me, they're like, "Why are you going so slow?" Because I'm like, "I don't want a ticket, and I don't want to die." So you're just gonna live with it. Suck it up.
Every day, rushing, rushing, no matter where you're going, rushing, rushing, rushing. And it's just like, just breathe, relax and just breathe. One, because the speeding, just getting the ticket alone is not worth it. If you hurt somebody, that's infinitely worse. You'll never, live that down completely, and it's not worth it. But I think it says a lot about, unfortunately, the times and state of mind of the mass consciousness of humanity itself, because everybody's rushing to get nowhere at all.
Yeah, I remember a few years ago when I was at Auburn, I had actually gone for spring break, was flying out to Washington State to see one of my best friends from Atlanta. And I had my friend that I had met, she drove me to Atlanta. We left our apartment about 11:30 because my flight was at 5:30 my time. And she drove 90 miles an hour on the interstate from Auburn to Atlanta. By the time we got out, I wanted to kiss the ground because
Yeah.
she was driving so fast. I looked at her and I said, "Why are you going so fast? My flight doesn't leave till 5:30." I got there at the airport like 4 hours early because of how fast she drove. I said, "Man," I
Yeah.
literally was like wanting to kiss the ground when I got out of the car. I was like, "Oh my God." And she screamed too at people on the road too. It was too much. And then when when I got back to Atlanta, I had another friend pick me up because she was driving through Atlanta from when she was coming home. And she picked me up, and I went at her and I said, she literally drove so fast. She screamed at every car when she went by. I said, I was laughing uncontrollably because I was like nervous, but it was like scared laughter. And she said, I rode with her too, and it scares me too. And I was like, so we were just like, oh, I was so scared. I was actually like, oh my God, I'm gonna die.
Yeah, I could see how that would be scary. No
It was
doubt.
like, and I've drove to Atlanta too, and I've driven to the airport prior to that too, because I dropped someone off there for a school competition out at, I think they went out west. I literally went speed limit, and I was like, fine. I was like, I was so scared.
Yeah.
But to digress from that, um, you've also, man, you're just such a fighter. You've overcame stage 4 cancer, which I'm congrats on that.
Thank
It's
you.
a huge
So far,
happy,
so good.
so happy for that. How did the diagnosis start, or how did this diagnosis come to be?
Yeah, so incredibly enough, I was in the best shape of my life. I mean, up at 4:30 in the morning, in the gym by 6 o'clock, leaving at 7:30 every day, at work by 9. I mean, like clockwork for 3 years. So I was in the best shape of my life. I thought I had a bad leg day because my thighs started to burn. And because of my injuries that I had when I was 18, I'm 39 when this starts to happen. So because of my injuries, I assumed it was from, my pelvis that had been shattered, nearly 20 years prior. And
Mm.
it got worse and worse over weeks and months to the point where I couldn't sleep through the pain. And I had pretty high tolerance for pain and I couldn't sleep. I'm losing sleep. So I started to see doctor, orthopedist, probably thought I was just looking for pills. I'm trying to tell him like, no, I'm in a lot of pain. He gave me um, physical therapy, made it worse. So nothing made sense. And it wasn't until one night at 2:15 in the morning, it was December of 2022, and the burning in my legs was so bad that I couldn't stand. I was shaking. So at 2:15 in the morning, I drove myself to the emergency room here in Tennessee. And I remember looking at the front desk from the parking spot. I was in so much pain that I was sweating, wondering how I was going to make it to the front desk, which was probably only 100 yards away. And, I nearly fell over by the time I got there. And I just said to the lady, I'm in terrible pain. I don't know what else to tell you. My orthopedist doesn't know what's going on. All I know is my legs are on fire. I can't stand and I need help. And they took some scans, and I was sitting in the waiting room, and a girl came in, and somebody came with her, and I thought, well, that's not good. Um, and she said, Andrew, I'm sorry, but I have really, really bad news. I'm expecting like maybe I've got like a pinched nerve or something like that. That's what I thought was going to be wrong with me. She said, you have stage 4 testicular cancer. It's aggressive and it's late. It's in your lungs, it's in your spine. It's pretty much moved up from, where it started and, it's everywhere. Uh, and, that was obviously a blow, very difficult. And it took, geez, I went into fight mode instantly. Fight or flight. I went into fight mode instantly. It wasn't until I finished the first round of chemotherapy and then found out that, uh-oh, the cancer is back, that it really hit me. What I was facing was death. I had, but for my accident, that was something that happened and it was done. It was like, okay, you're alive. You don't have to worry. This was different. Cancer is
Yeah.
a slow, creeping death that you see coming and you just can't get out of its way. And this was a completely different animal. Very difficult to deal with. Uh, Really, had I not joined that cult and worked through those issues and found myself the way I did, I'm not so sure I would have been able to handle what I had gone through as well as I did, despite how difficult it was. And thank God I was able to do 4 more rounds of chemotherapy, high dose chemo that was turned up an extra notch just for me because I was in such good shape. And um, I sit in front of you about 19 months considered cured, not in remission, but cured. I don't have cancer inside me. I had the only cancer, which is still curable in a stage 4 form. Um, and, I was blessed. I was given this really difficult experience. It taught me a lot. It kind of broke me open in a lot of ways. And that's what the cancer has been about. I go every 3-4 months for new scans. I see my doctor every month. Um, they're on top of this, but I made it out by the skin of my teeth and the grace of God.
Did they have any diagnosis of how the cancer kind of started? Was it from your car accident injury, or was it just like a spontaneous thing?
Yeah, I don't think they ever tell anybody what creates or causes cancer. I'm not so sure because then, it would be like, oh, well, we could figure out how to cure it if we knew how it started. But no, I don't, nobody could tell me how it started. I've had plenty of conversations with people, not doctors, saying, yeah, maybe, the trauma could have, created it. Other people, do thought forms create the potential for disease, that now we're talking metaphysics, um, or do you have a genetic predisposition towards cancer? All of those questions remain unanswered, unfortunately. Regardless of what causes it, I hope that someday soon we'll have a cure because it's there's not much like it when you have a disease like that is going to kill you and there's nothing you can do about it. I wouldn't wish that on anybody.
Absolutely. During that story, you had mentioned when you had gone to one of your doctors in the early stages, they said that they thought that you were just wanting pills. So I see in your about that you did survive and overcome addiction. Were you more addicted to drugs or was it alcohol or um and did the addiction kind of start before or after you had left the cult?
Yeah, so the addiction actually started because of the car accident. When I was 18, I look back on this and I think to myself, what were they thinking? They put me on Percocet every day at 18 years old. I'm still a baby. And they, had me popping Percocets every day, dopamine hits 4, 5, 6 times a day, taking the Percocets. And that's what started the addiction at 18. I had beat it twice. The second time, I beat the addiction literally days before I joined the cult. I was in this place again where I had these inexplicable experiences in meditation I couldn't explain. I saw a UFO on the beach and I felt, guided. I felt in this place of strength. And, I eventually was able to jump off and, beat the addiction for the second time, um, right before the cult. And then it actually fell back in afterwards. It was strange. It's interesting. They say the devil doesn't get you when things are bad. It's when they're going really good and you get out of line. And that's what happened to me after the cult. I was flying so high and I'm, yeah, I can take a couple painkillers. I'll be fine. And we know how that story goes. So something I've beat back several times at this point, unfortunately. And then you get cancer, and then you have no choice but to get on painkillers again because there's no other way to handle the pain. The pain is incredible. Nobody could. Um, so it was like it was very ironic, to have that happen for the gosh fourth time.
When you had left the cult, did the cult have any mentally, did you have PTSD from it? Did you get develop depression or any kind of mental health disorder from the cult or through these things that you've gone through, like the car accident, the overcoming battle of cancer to the cult? Have you developed any mental health struggles during this whole time?
I would like to say no, but at the same time, I'm not a doctor. I don't know if a mental health person or a mental health practitioner probed me about it, would they be able to find something that they could define as some kind of illness? I don't believe so. I think that they would find that I've looked at everything. I've sat with it. I've considered it. I've taken it in and I've processed, all of it as much as I could and found my balance, found my reality, found gravity despite, getting caught in this extreme situation. I kind of circumnavigated back to, a balanced place where I kind of triangulated my own beliefs, what truth was, what actuality was, and who I was as a person, who I wanted to be. And I think through all of that, I think although I'm not the mental health professional, I think that they would be encouraged by, the steadfastness, the wholeness, the balance that I've found because I know I am, and I know it's not everybody does, and that, I'm blessed however God put me together. I'm blessed to have certain abilities or characteristics that maybe make me or give me a predisposition towards, dealing with trauma, dealing with um, pain emotionally and physically. Um, it's hard to explain. Can't say, but a mental health professional would, but I'd think that they would be pretty happy um, with where I'm at. That said, when you have cancer, everybody sees a mental health professional. And while they didn't probe the cult stuff specifically, other than, some of the anxiety, or little bit of depression that you would get from it, I think they're pretty happy that I'd, you know, handled it and eventually pulled myself out of that hole that inevitably people can get stuck in when you're, 40 years old or younger and facing an inevitable death. That's a tough one.
Yeah, I deal with a lot of mental health struggles. I've been dealing with depression, anxiety since I was 13, or depression since I was 13, and anxiety since I was 18. And for you to be able to go through everything that you've been through and not really have a depression, anxiety, or any kind of mental health disorder, that's very impressive. Because a lot of people during this time, if they were a part of something that's very traumatizing like that, would get PTSD from it, would have severe mental health repercussions from it. So for you to be able to have gone through 10 months in a very, very traumatic cult experience, a very bad car accident, as well as overcoming cancer, for your mental health to be really good is really impressive, and I'm happy that you're able to go through that.
I
Um,
appreciate it. Thank you. At the end of the day, people in a cancer hospital tend to find God really quick if they haven't found him already. He is there inside those buildings. There's no doubt about it. And you come to a point where you realize that this life is like the dream. I mean, and I don't mean to get religious. I don't know what people believe, but like I have absolutely no doubt that there's God, that Jesus Christ is real. There's no doubt in my mind. Know that there is eternal life for us after this. And, you know, worst case scenario, that's it. I mean, and you go and be with God in heaven. I mean, that's what I believe, and I feel that in my bones, and it makes everything a little easier. It's still hard. I don't want to think about it. I get a little anxiety when I consider the fact that even at 19 months cancer free, I have to go for
mm,
checkups because the chances of it coming back are still good enough that
mm,
you wouldn't want to be in my shoes. And it's hard. But what can you do? You can't change it. Can't change it. So you have to go on. And I think for me, believing that this isn't the end for any of us, um, makes it all a little easier and add some purpose, which helps.
kind of lighten things up a little bit now. I don't know if this would be kind of added on, but
Sure.
something that I saw interesting from your profile was you kind of grew up and you had a parent that was gay, and this was, I guess, back in the late 90s, early 2000s. Um, Describe to me the relationship you had with your parent. I assuming it was your father.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Parents were divorced. I mean, before I remember, I was 1 year old, or not even born when they were really, obviously going their separate ways. Um, but my father raised us, me and my brother, who was exactly 1 year older than me to the day. Um, he raised us, great father, did everything he could. He, Boy Scout troop leader, soccer coach, there for all our baseball games, soccer games, all of that. Played tennis with us, horseback riding, took us skiing. I mean, he was a great parent. But by the time I was like 13, 12, 13, this is mid to late 90s, like 97, um, he had started to come out and experience a life that he had long denied himself, which was being gay. He was grown. He grew up in a Roman Catholic family. My family was the New York Mafia in the 50s and the 60s with strong ties to the Catholic Church. And for him being gay, as far as my grandfather was concerned, was like a huge problem. And I really give my dad a lot of credit for having the courage to, be himself as he feels he needs to be. And, I'm proud of him. But I have to say, at 12 and 13, when you don't really understand and the kids at school are mocking you because your dad is gay and, you don't want it to define you, but there's nothing you can do to get away from it. Being teased, ridiculed, teachers don't help. Nobody
Mm,
says a word. It wasn't protected back then. It wasn't like
mm,
okay. That was tough. And that's part of what put me on this road that inevitably, wrapped me around a tree. And I don't blame my dad. It's not his fault for that, but the way I dealt with it, or lack thereof, as a child, not having those coping mechanisms with it, it was what led to me becoming like an unruly teenager that was, flying by the seat of his pants. But yeah, I was in my early teenage years when my father, started to come out. Otherwise, he had dated women, my whole life to that point. And it was tough. I have to say it was tough. But now, I mean,
Mm.
he's good, and I appreciate, I love him, and I think he's a warrior for coming out and being himself, and um, that's pretty much all there is to it.
Do you have a relationship with your mom, or did you ever meet your mother?
Yeah, so sure. So my mom and I are close. She was around a lot when I was a kid. I shouldn't say a lot, but when I turned like maybe 13 or 14 is when she ended up living only about 15 minutes away. I spent a lot of time with her. Sixth grade, seventh grade, I lived with her, spent the summers there. A lot of fun. My stepfather, bless his soul, he's passed now. He had brain cancer. He was like a father to me. I have two sisters that are half sisters. One's in the mid 30s with four children, so two nieces, two nephews, and the other is in her early 30s, or late 20s, excuse me. And they're great. My mom, she lives here, or lived here in Tennessee. She's back in New Jersey now, but I talked to her 2 days ago. She's great. She's mom. So yeah, she's been in my life.
For a kid to go through that, a lot of kids that deal with parents that get divorced, it's such a broken household. But I think for you, it's a different situation. Y'all seem to have such a good relationship. You had a good relationship with your father, you had a good relationship with your mom, and even your stepfather, as well as your siblings. Even with everything that's gone on with your parents, y'all have had, I think, probably one of the more successful stories I've heard from people about, oh, well, my father, they all divorced, but we're all happy. We all like to support our kids and everything. So I'm so happy that you were able to have such a good childhood growing up in with your parents. And I know everything that goes on between, um, even when your father came out, that can even cause drift in kids and parents. But it seems like your whole family is so supportive of one another. That's so awesome. I know a lot of kids and parents with like that same relationship.
Sure. I mean, we had our our rocky points. We can both be stubborn and hard-headed, me and my father, and we can be a lot alike in that way, and it caused a lot of issues at times. But especially now, I seek to get along with everybody. I want peace in my life, and that's what's in my heart. That's what I feel, and so that's what I project into every relationship that I have. And if there isn't peace, then I just won't have the relationship. So. Um, we get along great. My mom and I do. We're all human. We've had our rocky moments, but at the end of the day, I choose to forgive. I choose to love. We're all human, and I am no stranger to mistakes, bad calls, and bad decisions, and I allow other people the space for the same. If I feel like I know what's in your heart, then that's good enough for me.
So going to your memoir, The War on Love, that kind of talks about the cult and everything. What inspired you to write the memoir? And I guess, was it kind of a coping mechanism? Was it kind of a thing that kind of helped you have some closure in what happened? Feel free to share everything about the book.
Yeah, sure. So, again, I wanted to set the record straight as far as what people believed. The origins really of how it started back in 2014 or 2015, really how it got going. And it kind of started a little bit before I got there. But that said, I felt like I could, open up and share, the inside view that nobody really had. Just bits and pieces were there, the superficial parts of the story. And, I wanted to really show people what it was like being there. Um, And you mentioned, was it a coping mechanism? And it definitely, I learned that even 10 years later, it wasn't until I wrote the book that I realized I had so much left to process. When you leave one of these situations, you kind of move on and let it go, which is what I thought was the right thing to do. But what I didn't realize is like I avoided so much of it. And it wasn't until I sat down in, a quiet room, no emotion was really running through me trying to bring these memories back up and write them out, that I realized, how much emotion was hidden within these memories once I started pulling them up and writing them down, feeling what I felt in those moments and going through understanding. And, after writing the book, my views on the situation were much different than even before writing the book, despite the fact that it took me 6 to 8 months to write the book and I had already left, gosh, 9 years. Um, in those few months, I processed more than I had in, 9 years. And uh, writing the book was definitely cathartic, writing it out from like I said, a place where, you're not emotional, you're just being truthful, honest, sober about it. And yeah, it was tough. It was tough to go there in a lot of ways. But it was worth it. And I've grown. I remember people used to ask me, "Did you think it was a cult when you joined?" And I used to say, "No, it wasn't a cult when I was there, but yeah, it became one." And now, I realize how, untrue that was. That it was, you can call it a cult the whole time, from when I walked in the front door and the place was a mess. Um, and Amy was incoherent, drunk, tripping on mushrooms, and I realized that she couldn't even talk to me. She was drooling. I remember thinking to myself, like, this is a big mistake. Through all of that, there's so much that you just don't realize that is there for you to process and still learn from and grow from. And I hope that's one of the lessons people take from my book, that even the most difficult, insane, crazy, extreme situations can offer you a lot of value and growth if you take them with a grain of salt. Give yourself some space to be human and make mistakes, and look for, the silver linings and what you've experienced. And, I've committed myself to learning from my mistakes, and I made a lot of them. So I've learned a lot. It's been, as I said, the silver lining for all the mistakes I've made is probably why I've learned as much as I have.
I have appreciated you so much for coming on. Um,
Thank you.
I kind of have to give him some accolades as well. Lord, I can't talk. Um, he's, for him to go from hitting rock bottom with his cancer diagnosis, his almost near fatal car accident, as well as surviving a cult. He's been featured on so many things that have his story shared. And I think you're one of the more successful stories of being able to have your story shared, having a memoir shared. He's also on Podmatch, which me and him, this is how we got connected from, and um how all these interviews get. He's been listed in the top 10 for guest rating. He's been one of the top 10 guests, highly requested people to be on here, and that's how I found him, was from the top 10 list as well. Um, and for every good reason. He's got such a huge, impactful story, and it's just, I'm so happy that you are doing so well now, and that I know that this episode will touch so many people, that it'll help people, even if they are dealing with cancer, if they're dealing with even addiction, that all these aspects that you've shared with me, I know one of these scenarios will help people so much. So I appreciate you so much for coming on. Um, for
Thank
people
you.
that would like to buy the book, if they would like to learn more about your story as well as follow you on social media, where all can they find you? And just feel free to promote everything that you got going on.
Yeah, sure. I appreciate that. Let me just say thank you. Very kind words for you. I'm as human as anybody. I have my tough moments still. Um, but it's really about our intent. What's in your heart. Don't Not as much about where you're at, but where do you want to go? And that's where I stay focused on, is where I want to go. And I in this moment, I look towards Christ. I look towards God. It makes life a little bit easier for me. Maybe that doesn't work for everybody, but for me, that's the way. And thank you for the opportunity and everyone that listens. So the book is called The War on Love. There's a big picture of Amy on the front. The art is actually half, you see her face is split. So it, it was actually to depict the Amy that I knew and the mother god persona kind of at war with each other. Few people have defined my life the way that she has or influenced it the way that she has. And I pray for her soul. I pray for her all the time. Um, and I hope the best for her. And you can get the book at thewaronlove.com, just as it's written. You could also find it on Amazon, both in paperback or in the ebook version. All I would say is that on the website, I have extra materials, like bonus info on the website that isn't on Amazon. But yeah, that's where you can get it, thewaronlove.com. I'm happy with the book. It was a huge undertaking, but it's come out okay. And as you mentioned, I didn't realize so many people would be interested in telling my story. It's been fun. It's been a lot, but I'm happy to tell it as long as people find the value and interest in it. Then I'll keep sharing. And I appreciate you having me on. I appreciate your kindness and your words mean a lot, and I really it does mean a lot. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm looking at your website and I've seen this as seen on. I mean, you've been on so many big, huge things. I mean, you've been on New York Times. You've had something for People's, Rolling Stone, Variety, CNN. You've had something from The Guardian. I mean, so I'm so happy that so many news outlets, and these are some pretty high. I mean, these are like the highest of top newspapers, magazines that have covered this story, and I think um it's one of those success stories where it's like finally people are noticing. So I'm so happy for that, and I've got to say, I will put all of your his links down in the description. I'll put links to his book, website, and social media accounts down there as well, so that's all in one spot. Um, I know that don't really get to see the book as well since it's audio, but I've got to say, the shadiness of the book cover, I love. They've made her look. I'll try to when I put teasers up and post it. I'll post a picture of the book because it's something that has to be seen because it's like half young and half of her look like old. It's so I love the person that did the artwork for it did such a great job. They were like shady with it. I like it.
Yeah, we wanted to show the split between, how the mother god persona led to led to her, essentially decaying both spiritually and then physically, and how the Amy that was hidden underneath this mother god persona was a radiant, beautiful, wonderful, warm person, mother, who was lost to this persona. Who knows what was really going on there? As far as energies and, darkness versus light goes, what kind of wars or battles were being waged in other realms, but we definitely pulled some punches with the cover and went for it, no doubt. I'm happy with the art as well. I think, like you said, the artist did a wonderful job.
It looks so good, and it's that double meaning. It shows like this is what people saw. This is what actually how I saw her. It has that double meaning. It's shady, but it has such a good meaning to it. So I think the person that did the artwork did a fantastic job. It looks really good. I'm so happy that it's out. The book is
Thank
out
you.
now. As he's mentioned, that's available on Amazon. If you go to that website, you'll get some very special editions that you don't see anywhere else. So I'll put all those links down there below. I'll for if you would like to follow me on social media to keep updates about everything, Instagram and TikTok, I'm on Lethal Venom Podcast on there and Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. It's Noah's podcast. Feel free to follow those if you'd like to catch teasers as well as behind the scenes stuff. Just news information about the podcast, feel free to follow on the podcast on those platforms. And then, as always, follow Lethal Venom where you get your podcast from. I'm on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, iHeartRadio, YouTube, and Pandora, as well as other platforms. I'm basically everywhere. Feel free to follow those so you'll be notified when new episodes come out if you choose to. Um, Andrew, thank you so much for coming on. I'm so happy for you and that you've had nothing but success, and I wish you nothing but the best and everything that goes on, and um, just keep doing what you're doing. It's so impactful. So I appreciate you, and I know a lot of people are going to appreciate this episode.
Thank you, Noah. That means a lot to me, and I reflect the same to you. I would say to your subscribers, thanks for being here, or your listeners. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, share, follow. Noah, you did a great job. It's been a pleasure talking with you, and I appreciate your kindness and your interest, and the same for your listeners. I wish only good things for everybody.
Well, thank you so much, Andrew, and to my listeners, thank y'all so much for listening. Y'all have a great rest of your day, week. Y'all be safe, and I'll catch you on the next episode of Lethal Venom.